Planning Commission meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Hicks.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
Good evening, everyone. Jeremy, roll call.
Greenberg.
Here.
Hicks.
Here.
Mako.
Here.
Shapaka.
Here.
Soriano.
Here.
Tamarkin is absent and Wester is absent.
All right, we have a couple of additions and corrections to the agenda. One, we are going to read a couple exiting comments from our esteemed colleague who is absent this evening. He sent an email in. And also, for unfinished business, we're going to follow up with the zoning code, where we had a brief discussion in our last meeting. We have somebody who would like to make a comment on that, and I think we opened that door up. We will handle that in the unfinished business section. So we have the meetings that were Planning Commission workshop minutes of December 6th were mailed out. Is there any corrections noted? Hearing none, roll call, or do I have an approval?
So moved by Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Is there a second?
Second, Soriano.
Thank you, Mr. Soriano.
Aggressive on the mic.
We have a motion by Mr. Hicks and seconded by Mr. Soriano. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Jeremy, roll call.
Hicks.
Yes.
Soriano.
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Shapaka.
Yes.
Greenberg.
Yes.
Motion passes. We now move into the portion where we swear on our applicants and speakers for tonight. I will turn it over to our city attorney, Matt Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are now at the public hearing portion of the meeting. The public hearing will operate as follows. Administrative staff will make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant or their representative may then make a presentation or comment on the application. Public comment will then be open for 3 minutes allowed per speaker. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Speakers must complete a speaker slip and come to the podium and state their name. The applicant will then be given 10 minutes to comment. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. If there is more than one application pending for a particular address, the presentation on each application may be consolidated and presented as one. At this time, will persons wishing to present testimony this evening please rise and raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, state I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. We now move into the application portion. We have one variance application tonight. I will read the application in its entirety. Before we proceed, it is a variance application number V0025-2023 to consider a variance application to vary Chapter 1143.08C, yard requirements of codified ordinances of the City of Gahanna to allow for a seasonal enclosure installation on property located at 155 Rivers Edge Way. Parcel ID 025-012841. Current zoning SF3. Kevin Farrell is the applicant. I now turn it over to the administration for their presentation.
Test, okay. This application is for a variance at 155 Rivers Edge Way. Here is a zoning map of the surrounding area. The property is zoned SF3 with a limited overlay, which is a single-family residential district. The applicant is requesting approval of a variance to allow for an addition within a side yard setback. The addition is a 10 by 16-foot seasonal enclosure that would be located to the rear of the home. The side yard setback for all sites zoned SF3 is 7 foot 6 inches. The proposed addition is 7 foot 1 inches from the west side property line, so it would encroach 5 inches into the required setback. However, the existing home on the lot is located 6 feet from both the east and west side property lines, so it already encroaches more into the setback than the proposed addition. There is an overlay text for the site, but it doesn't have any additional requirements that would apply to this application. Here is a site map of the property. The proposed addition is shown in green, and as mentioned, is located 7 feet 1 inches from the west side property line. So the variance is just for one setback. It meets all other setback requirements. Here are proposed elevations of the addition. The first is the west elevation, which is the view from the adjacent property to the west, which is the closest to the addition. The second is from the south, so that's the view from the rear of the lot. Here's the criteria that Planning Commission considers when approving a variance. The first is that there are special circumstances or conditions that apply to the land, building, or use. The second is that the granting of the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of property rights. And the third is that the granting of the application will not have any negative effects on the neighborhood. So staff recommends approval of the application as submitted. The request is minor in nature as the addition only encroaches 5 inches into the setback. And as mentioned briefly in the last meeting, with the zoning code rewrite, this would be considered a de minimis variance, which would be approved administratively. As mentioned, the existing home is already closer to the side property line than the addition, so it would not be visible from the right-of-way, and the addition has already been approved by the neighborhood's HOA. So that concludes my presentation, and I turn it back over to the commission.
Thank you, Maddie. Can you put up the site plan on the screen as we continue? Thank you. We now open the public portion for the public for comments on this. Would the applicant like to make a comment? And I would recommend coming up to the mic, state your name and address, and kind of stay there in case there's any questions from the commission.
Right. Hello, my name is Marcus. I am one of the employees at Great Day Improvements that helped Abby Kent get this addition going. I mean, with that being the detail that she gave, I just came to basically say that, you know, the addition on her house, the reason why we needed to be there is because it's right on the other side of a bump out window. So to take it to the next half, we couldn't move 5 inches over. It would move it 4 feet over, changing the whole layout of the room. So.
Thank you for the clarity. Is there anybody else from the public that has a comment? Do we receive any kind of emails or anything? No. Hearing none, we close the public portion and open up for questions from the commission. Starting on my left.
No questions.
That's always a good sign. None? Going down to Ms. Greenberg?
None down here.
Mr. Soriano?
None for me.
I think it's thank you for the explanation for the windows, which is good. I also do not have any questions. Do we have a motion for variance?
Mr. Chair, I move that variance 0025-2023 be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Is there a second?
Second, Soriano.
Thank you, Mr. Soriano. We have a motion by Mr. Greenberg and seconded by Mr. Soriano. Is there any in-depth, detailed discussion on this? Seeing none. Jeremy, roll call.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Soriano,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Shapaka,
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Passes. Thank you very much for bringing that up. That concludes our application portion. We are going to move on to unfinished business. This is a zoning code follow-up that we had, and we have a speaker, and I believe that is Charles Adams. If you want to come to the microphone, state your name and address, and what kind of input you'd like to add to the zoning.
Thank you. Charlie Adams. I work with the Daimler Group, 1533 Lakeshore Drive, Columbus, Ohio, 43209. And I want to thank everyone for the ability to come here and speak to the zoning code. Daimler and Gahanna have a long history with each other, over 30 plus years, hundreds of thousands of square feet, having developed together, built. We're actually constructing the Ortho 1 building right there in the New Crescent development. And, really we want to extend our thanks to Mr. Blackford for the fine work on the code. Extremely easy to read compared to a lot of other codes. And, really we just had one small comment we wanted to bring up in regards to the redevelopment of office, particularly in the innovation and manufacturing district. And that is there's specific building types that are in this environment have A lot of offices have completely fallen out of favor from market, but some of them are not going to be coming back, and that's because of their inability for adaptive reuse. In particular, single-story type buildings that were originally meant for call centers, those are now have completely moved to at-home jobs, and those are not going to be coming back. We have two such properties in the Innovation Manufacturing District. We've been working hard for 2.5 years since COVID started to try to come up with adaptive reuse, redevelopment proposals for these. And even in a low interest rate environment, when they started, it still just didn't pencil to find a way to bring vibrancy and to make these buildings to be no longer vacant and eventually, kind of just start to fall off and no longer be vibrant. And so what we're really asking for is an adjustment to, there currently is an exclusion for charter schools, secondary schools, primary schools in this particular district. And what we're asking for is we have found in other communities, other districts, these have been able to be converted to charter schools very readily in a way that is, kind of doable within this economic environment. And frankly, what we're asking for is the ability to make it a conditional use. So that way, every single time that if there is such a prospective tenant, that it could come before this body and we could discuss and say, hey, is this a right fit for your academic mix? Does this meet the needs of the community? Knowing that all charter schools kind of have their different angle, their unique approach, we wanted to be able to bring those forward to people. And I don't want to belabor the point, but we do have, we tried industrial adaptive reuse for these. Our buildings have such low ceilings that every single industrial user passed on those. They can't get the storage and the racking that they need. We've tried to make them more amenitized adaptive reuse, but the rental rates that you can achieve, it's not economically feasible. So you keep running into these dead ends. We've kind of done the reverse of what a developer does. We've stressed them in positive scenarios for if the economic climate did improve, would this be something that the market would come back to us? And from what we're seeing, we don't believe that to be the case. So what we're saying is that there is no path forward for certain types of buildings, and we don't want that blanket yes, but we do want the maybe and the ability to come in and talk to this body and eventually say, hey, this is the right use, a potential right use, and working together to see what that would be. So appreciate the time and hopefully the flexibility to try to solve these problems and bring some more vibrancy into the city of Gahanna. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. Mr. Blackford, would you like to follow up on that? No, you don't have to, only if you want to.
Sure.
Please offer clarity.
Definitely appreciate speakers' comments, and I know there is definitely a need to look at alternative uses in some of these areas. Gahanna might not be as hard hit as some other communities, but certainly it's something that all the communities are dealing with repurposing office buildings. It doesn't look like that market's coming back. We met with a couple of different folks. I believe it was a little over a year ago. A couple of different charter schools reached out to the city. One of them, I believe, for one of the properties that they were just talking about. And staff did propose an amendment to the code when we had that long list of code changes to add charter schools as a conditional use. Planning Commission thought best to maybe not add that as a conditional use. If we've changed our outlook and we're okay with that as conditional use, that's a very easy change for staff to make. I'll admit that I am not an expert in the charter schools. It seems like they vary quite a bit with their potential impact. So I think staff would think that a conditional use would be appropriate in that case, so we could evaluate for traffic and some of those other issues that I think that schools get. But that's up to Planning Commission. Any direction you have for staff, we can go that route, sir.
So as it sits right now, it would be a full variance request?
It would be a prohibited, it would, I hate to say it would be a use variance, because it would really be a rezoning is what it would be. And I would say that the IM district, as is proposed, or the OCT as we know it today, is essentially a geographic district. So rezonings might be a little bit tougher in, say, Old Gahanna or in the IM district, 'cause that's really kind of the vision for that area. And schools are really in a governmental, kind of even charter schools kind of zoning, so it would be a fairly drastic zoning change if they wanted to go that route. And schools, again, being in a more of a institutional district zoning, it really wouldn't allow for, those office and those other type of commercial uses that we would see in that general area. So it's really one or the other type of use.
Very good. Is there any other comments from the commission?
I was trying to remember our conversation when it was brought up before, and from what I can remember, our concern was, we don't want to be like our neighbors in the township and have residential use in our industrial section. And I think the concern was, the school use, it's not conducive, no sidewalks, it's not conducive to children being around, and I think that was our opposition at the time, if I remember correctly. I think I still would keep that same position.
Ms. Megan?
Right. I might be talking in generalities, but again, in my day job, I've run into this before, and kind of a similar situation. We had a repurposing of a commercial property that wanted to go to a charter school, and it didn't turn out very well. And I'll just leave it at that. Again, appreciate the comments. Again, I realize that every situation is different, but again, just based upon my experience, these things can get a little dicey. So I would be very cautious going down this road.
Thank you. Ms. Greenberg? Ms. Soriano?
I was just going to add, I'm sympathetic to, from a development perspective, just in terms of adaptive reuse and what's, especially in today's environment, office environment, and how that feels. My day job as an architect, worked with Daimler before. I understand how difficult it can be in terms of retrofitting structures, and from a standpoint of reuse, from a sustainability, adaptive reuse and reposition can be a great way to kind of renew structures. That said, I guess I'm not fundamentally opposed to something like a conditional use in that zone, pending. I'm not looking at without looking at a zoning map and understanding where are the limits, and going from memory of an industrial, what our district is, or where we have our zoning. I could see potentially where the edges of that, where we're starting to rub up against, perhaps some residential use or single-family use, where that could maybe be appropriate. But, like Mr. Hicks, I'm recalling, fundamentally, it would be hard. It's hard to visualize something like a charter school in the middle of an OCT or something of that nature. So that would be, like I said, I'm not fundamentally opposed to allowing a conditional use, but I would question, as Mr. Mako saying, just the compatibility of use in a primarily industrial zone.
Thank you, Mr. Soriano. There's a few comments. Rebuttal or kind of?
It's not staff's call, so I would defer to Planning Commission. But I'm not sure if it's helpful or not. But here's the proposed zoning map, 270. This is Tech Center. I think we're kind of talking about this general area. Yeah. And in this general area is where we've seen some requests in the past. So again, it's up to you all, but I don't know if there was I'm just trying to brainstorm here out loud, like said maybe like almost like an overlay if Planning Commission maybe thought that a few properties here, because this is, I know it doesn't show up real well, but Morrison and that, like this area, because it's away from all the industrial and the heavy traffics, then there could be a what I'll just basically say, we can come up with some overlay kind of provisions or conditional use if you meet a couple of like location criteria to, you know, we could work on some things if desirable, but not sure that it is. But if so, we could always work on some.
Thank you, Mr. Blackford. I would be in favor of the overlay verbiage put in there. I think we can identify some of the areas on the hard edges. And if not, we do have an avenue by getting it rezoned and getting it done. And we're pretty sympathetic to that when it's looked on a case-by-case basis. So, is there any other comments or issues on that? Anybody, or you got a closing comment for it, or? Thank you, Mr. Blackford.
Yep. Nothing additional specific to the speaker's comments, but just to address briefly the zoning code in general, if I may. I know we talked about it. We provided the draft, I think, around the Thanksgiving holiday. We talked briefly last meeting. Our hope is to have this as a formal agenda item at our first meeting in January, which I believe is January 10th. We're working on a few things behind the scenes, namely signage. We're trying to tighten up a little bit, permanent and temporary signs. If there's anything that Planning Commission has noticed that you would like us to kind of work on, to present to you on the 10th, we have time to make adjustments to the code. So I would just say if there's anything that anyone noticed that you'd like us to look at, we'd be more than happy to. But again, the goal is to, you know, if things go well tonight, we're not hearing a lot of issues. Again, January 10th for an agenda item. So appreciate it.
A copy is going to be available for our review before the 9th, or is it just on?
It would be attached to the agenda. It should be substantially similar to what you've seen zoning map wise and the zoning code. But like I said, the only thing, I know we've worked on a few tweaks, but I think the only thing that might be at all substantive in my opinion is just we're reworking some scenarios with the signage, trying to clean it up and make it a little bit better. So I think largely it's the same document that was provided in November, but again, if Planning Commission's not comfortable with the timeline and so forth, obviously, you know, that timeline can adjust to Planning Commission's needs.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Blackford.
Thank you.
Moving on to new business. Any new business? Hearing none. Official reports. Assistant City Attorney.
Nothing to report at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. Director of Planning, back up.
Thank you very much. You know what? I don't think I have any comments for planning.
Council liaisons.
Yes, we had a great meeting. City Council did on Monday. It was Karen Angelou's Councilwoman Angelou's final meeting after 34 years of service. That was a nice send-off that they had. On the agenda, the budget for 2024 was passed, so that's good. Good news for staff and all that. So we're working on some initiatives. We're glad that's passed. And also on the agenda, not to steal CIC representative's thunder, but the CIC contract for 2024 was renewed. So again, the Gahanna Community Improvement Corporation will be doing some fine work for the city's economic development efforts. So that's what I have for City Council Representative. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you again, Mr. Blackford. Mayor's not in the house and the chair. I have no comments. I'll have a poll comment here, a member comment later. Any correspondence and actions? Be noted. Thank you, Jeremy. So we have moved on to the just comments from the members, and I'm going to start off with Mr. Wester, who's absent tonight. He said something that he wanted to have read into the minutes, I guess, that his gratitude. He says, Mayor Jadwin, member of council, planning commission members, Michael Blackford, Matt Roth, Pam Riley, Jeremy, Logan, Maddie, Sophia, Gahanna City employees, Gahanna residents, and those who I've missed. Previous plans preclude my attendance at this evening's meeting. I have asked that the following be included in the agenda as a correspondence received. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve as a planning commission member under 3 mayors. During this period, Gahanna has experienced tremendous development. I am grateful for having the opportunity to contribute to that growth. I am confident that the Planning Commission will continue to successfully meet future challenges. And with that, I thank everyone for their patience and support and pass the motion Move to adjourn. So he snubbed you. I should have read this prior. To a yet-to-be identified commission individual. Best wishes and happy holidays to everyone. Regards, Tom Lester, the senior, as we call. I'm going to hold off on that move to adjourn because he's not here. I can't offend him. For my comments, I've been here for about 4 years, and Tom has been a staple, and he's a little foundation, a pillar to me. Not that he was always consistent. I knew what he was going to look for and what he was going to comment on, and we kind of counted on him to do that, so that we don't have to repeat the questions. We kind of fall into a groove based upon our personalities, and Tom was always steadfast in his opinions, and I think that would be severely missed. Hopefully, the person who replaces him will have that same passion for the position. Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Blackford has shared that the zoning code update was given to us around Thanksgiving, and I don't know about you guys, but that calls for some lively discussion around my Thanksgiving dinner table. It was either that or politics. So I would like for us to move forward on the timeline that's been set and having it as an agenda item in our meeting in January, so we can get this process to continue to move forward. Mr. Wester was a great example for all of us to follow, and definitely will be missed. I'm sure we'll see him around, though. And thank you. Those are my comments.
Mr. Baker?
Yeah, just real quick, just also want to echo the sentiments about Mr. Wester. Again, I'm the newbie here, but I knew pretty much from the get-go that he was, brought a lot of passion and a lot of knowledge to the position, and he's going to be missed. So, yeah, again, I know he's not here, but just want to thank him for his service, and just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and looking forward to 2024.
Mr. Greenberg.
I want to echo all the sentiments for Mr. Wester. He was an inspiration, I think, to many of us, just watching him in action on the Planning Commission. So I'll miss him, and he's agreed to meet us tonight at Signatures after the meeting, so I encourage everybody to attend. And then I also want to thank Mr. Shapaka and Mr. Mako for their leadership this year. Great job as chairman and vice chair of the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Sariano.
No extensive comments. Without reiterating what my colleagues have said about Mr. Wester, he's been on the commission since I've been on the commission, and always look to him for, great perspective and thoughts on what we're doing. Also want to echo Mr. Hicks' comments around, I'm excited to see the kind of zoning improvements move forward and in the new year. I think it'll be a great way to kind of start off the new year. So looking forward to it. Wish everybody the best in terms of the holiday season. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sariano. One last time for Mr. Wester. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, yeah.
Heard.